This is cool exam.
Yeah. All right. Okay, so sexual reproduction, you understand the meaning of it. It is a kind of reproduction which involves the fusion of gametes. First of all, formation of gametes, and then later on, fusion of gametes. Now, in flowering plants, so by flowering plants, we mean all the angiosperms. Now, see, in this particular chapter, we're going to divide the whole entire reproduction processes into certain groups, okay, or certain events that takes place in three stages. Okay, will you be comfortable in switching on your video? Because it's better that way.
Ma'am, ma'am, I just came out from the shower. So is it fine if I own after an hour? Maybe.
This class is of an
I
hour
came,
only.
I came back from school just now, so it's
All right. Anyway, so the whole entire process of reproduction, it is divided into three steps, or you can say the events that take place. So there is pre-fertilization events, there is fertilization events, and then there are post-fertilization events. Now, pre and post means before and after. Now, just like how human beings or the animals have proper sex organs, same way the plants also does. But in the case of plants, the flower is the sex organ. It is the reproductive structure of the plant. Now, the human beings, see, and inside a flower, there are actually four whorls or four units present, out of which two of the units are reproductive unit and two of the units are accessory units or accessory whorls. Now, talking about the reproductive unit, we have the androecium and the gynoecium. Now, gynoecium is the female reproductive part of the flower, whereas androecium is the male reproductive part of the flower. Now, this is a whole, you can say. There is a unit of androecium which is known as stamen. And then there is a unit of gynoecium which is known as carpel or pistil. Okay, now talking about the two accessory whorls. So there are sepals and there are petals, right? But these are the units. A group of sepals is known as calyx and a group of petals is known as corolla. So in total, we have androecium, gynoecium, calyx and corolla. And one more thing to remember is that androecium and gynoecium are the ones that are directly involved in the reproduction process, whereas calyx and corolla, they are not directly involved, but they are indirectly involved, as what they do is that they attract the pollinators. Any doubts up until now? We'll discuss what
ma'am.
pollinators later on.
Ma'am,
For now,
gynoecium
hmm.
is what? What's the
Gynoecium.
function of gynoecium? Yes.
Gynoecium is the female reproductive part, just like how androecium is the male reproductive part.
No, what's the function of it?
In general, any female or male reproductive organs, no matter what the organism is, their function is to make the gametes. So androecium
Mm.
makes the male gamete, gynoecium makes the female gametes. Because ultimately, in sexual reproduction, the two gametes will fuse. Okay. So the
Got it.
function of it is to make gametes. Now let us look at the pre-fertilization events and structures. Okay, so much before the actual flower is seen on a plant, the decision that the plant is going to flower has taken place. Several hormones and structural changes are initiated, which lead to differentiation and further development of the floral primordium. Inflorescences are formed which bear the floral buds and then the flowers. Now the flower, the male and the female reproductive structures, the androecium and the gynoecium differentiate and develop. Androecium consists of a whorl of stamens. So one unit of androecium is stamen, representing the male reproductive organ, and gynoecium represents the female reproductive organ. And one unit of gynoecium is pistil or carpel. Now we'll talk about stamen in depth. Now stamen, microsporangium and pollen grain. Each of these we have to study. Now a stamen has two parts. There is the anther and the filament. So the long and slender, slender means thin. So a long and thin stalk-like structure is there, which is known as the filament. This entire part is the filament. Then the terminal, at its terminal end, there is the presence of a bilobed anther. Bilobe means something that contains two lobes. So that is the anther. So the stamen has been divided into two parts, anther and filament. Now the proximal end of the filament, meaning this side, this is the proximal end of the filament. It is either attached to the thalamus of the flower or to the petal. Thalamus, have you seen in a flower, like right here, there is like the part from where the petals arise, there is a very swollen part. Have you ever looked at it?
Yes, yes.
Yes. So that swollen part of it is the thalamus. Petals, you already know. So the filament can either be attached to the thalamus or to the petal of the flower. The number and the length of stamens are variable in flowers of different species. So, for example, if one flower has 10 stamens in it, then the other flower might not have 10, more than 10 or less than 10. So, it varies from species to species. And then, if you were to collect a stamen from 10 flowers, each of them will be 10 different types. Now, talking about a typical anther of angiosperm, meaning the flowering plant. So, a typical anther is bilobed. It has two lobes, and each lobe has two theca. So, two theca are present. That is why it is known as dithecous. So, it is bilobed and dithecous. Then there is a longitudinal groove runs lengthwise, separating the theca. So, this line that you're seeing, this line separates the theca, or here. Okay, it separates it. It is a longitudinal groove. Now, the bilobe nature of an anther is very distinct in transverse section. So, when you take the anther and you cut it from here, if you cut it like this, then that becomes the transverse section. And if you look at it now, so it has four sides. So, from the inside, it is tetragonal because it has four sides. 1, 2, 3, and 4. These are the four sides. So, because
Ma'am,
of
that one is the. Ma'am, is that the line which you told? Is it the longitudinal groove?
which one?
The one which is separating the lobes?
Yeah, the one that separates the lobe, that is the longitudinal groove. But this line that I've drawn, we have cut it in a transverse section. A longitudinal
Yes.
section means cutting it like this, but transverse section is
Mm-hmm.
taking a blade and cutting it like this. So that just like how we crack an egg, so you crack an
Yes,
egg in the
yes.
middle, right? And then you have two
Right.
halves. So just like that, if you cut it for the and for an anther, then the two halves would give you the transverse section of it. Okay.
Right.
Hmm. So inside it, there are four sides. So that is why it is tetragonal. And each of these four sides contain a structure which is known as microsporangia. So the microsporangia are those structures that are located two in each lobe. So one here, and then one here, one here. So at the end, if we want to describe a anther of an angiosperm, so we would say that it is bilobe, it is dithecous, and it is tetrasporangiate because four microsporangia are present. So tetra is for four, sporangiate is defining that four of the microsporangia are present. So the anther is bilobe, dithecous, and tetrasporangiate. Now the microsporangia develop further and become the pollen sac. Now this microsporangia that were present two in each of the lobes, now it will become the pollen sac. And inside the pollen sac, the pollen grains will be formed. And just like how in males, in human males, what is the male gamete? Hmm?
Testis. Testis.
Male gamete, not the male reproductive structure, the gamete. The male gamete is sperm and the female gamete is ova, right? So, yeah,
Yes.
just equivalent of male gamete sperm here in plant is the pollen grain. Okay, pollen grain is a male gametophyte. Clear? Now, if we
Yes.
were to look inside the microsporangium, now we are going inside here, taking one of these structures and finding out what the structure looks like from the inside. So, now the microsporangium in a transverse section appears circular in outline. It is generally surrounded by four wall layers. So one microsporangium is surrounded by 4 layers of wall on the outside. The first is epidermis, endothecium, middle layer, and tapetum. So these are the names of the 4 walls. Okay, epidermis, endothecium, middle layer, and tapetum. Now, the first 3 layers, meaning epidermis, endothecium, and middle layer, they are responsible for protection and they help in dehiscence of anther to release pollen. Dehiscence of anther means bursting of the anther. What happens, as I told you, that pollen grains are the male gametes in the plants. So once they are developed inside the anther, then the anther bursts so that the pollen grains can be spread everywhere. So that is why the dehiscence of anther is a very important phenomena, and it is done by these 3 layers, the first 3 layers: epidermis, endothecium, and middle layer. Now, what about the last layer? The tapetum.
Ma'am,
It is, yes,
does dehiscence basically means bursting of the flower?
not the flower, anther.
Anther. Okay.
Yeah, the part of like the male reproductive part, the anther, once the pollen grains are matured, then how can it
Yes.
transfer the pollen grain? So it bursts. And anything that bursts, it means that it will release out everything like this. So that is what the anther does. So for that, dehiscence means bursting. So for that bursting, these 3 layers are important. They help for the anther to dehisce. Now, the innermost layer is the tapetum, and its function is for nourishment. So it nourishes the developing pollen grains. The cells of the tapetum, it possess dense cytoplasm and generally have more than one nucleus. So it has mostly more than one nucleus present in it. Normally, one cell contains one nucleus, right? But the cells of the tapetum, it contains more than one nucleus. Now, when the anther is young, a group of compactly arranged homogeneous cells called as the sporogenous tissue occupies the center of the microsporangium. So microsporangium, in the middle, it has sporogenous tissue. Now let us see how does the process of microsporogenesis takes place. Microsporogenesis is the formation of the male gamete in plants. Now, as the anther develops, meaning after the anther has become matured, the cells of the sporogenous tissue, it undergoes meiotic division to form microspore tetrad. So now what happens? That when the sporogenous tissue is now undergoing the process of reductional division or meiosis or meiotic division, and it forms a microspore tetrad. Tetrad means
Or
4 cells in a linear sequence. This is a tetrad. Okay. Now, as each cell of the sporogenous tissue is capable of giving rising to a microspore tetrad, each one is potential pollen or microspore mother cell. Now, these tetrads, they are capable of making the pollen grain. Now, the process of formation of microspore from pollen mother cell is known as microsporogenesis, and it takes place through meiosis. Remember, no matter whether it is plants or whether it is animal, the process of formation of gametes will take place through meiosis. Clear?
yes.
Now, the microspores that we are talking about, they are formed and they are arranged in a cluster of 4 cells. That is why we call them as microspore tetrad. Now, as the anther matures and dehydrates, the microspore dissociate from each other and develop into pollen grains. Now, the microspore, after being developed nicely, it will develop into pollen grains. So, inside each microsporangium, several thousands of microspores or pollen grains are formed that are released with the dehiscence of anther. So, this is how the formation of pollen grain takes place. And the formation of pollen grain is known as microsporogenesis, and it happens through meiosis of the pollen mother cell or the sporogenous tissue. Any doubts up until now?
No, ma'am. Got it.
All right, now talking about the pollen grain, let us look at its structure and how does it look like. Now you might have seen that if you touch a flower, mostly a hibiscus or any flower, there is like a yellow powdery substance that gets deposited on your hand. That is nothing but the pollen grain. It looks powdery because we tend to mash it. It's very tiny, but those are the pollen grains. Now, pollen grains have a very peculiar structure, and because of that structure, they are very, very unique. Now, pollen grains are generally spherical, measuring about 25 to 50 micrometers in diameter. It has a prominent two-layered wall. The hard outer layer is known as the exine, and it is made up of sporopollenin, and it is one of the most like resistant organic material, this sporopollenin. So it means that the outer layer of the pollen cannot be degraded. It cannot be destroyed by any enzyme because sporopollenin is very resistant. It is very tough enzyme. Now, it can withstand high temperature and strong acid and even alkali. No enzyme that degrades sporopollenin is so far known. Pollen grain exine has prominent aperture called as germ pore. Now see, if this is the entire layer, there is a part wherein the sporopollenin is not present, and that structure is the germ pore. So here the sporopollenin is absent. Pollen grains are well preserved as fossils because of the presence of sporopollenin. Since there is no enzyme that can degrade sporopollenin, so pollen grains can be preserved as fossils. They can be fossilized. So it means that if we find under the ground certain pollen grains of, you can say, tens or thousands of years ago, they will still be intact because they cannot get degraded. Clear?
Yes, ma'am. The germ pores are basically present on the surface, like on the exine.
It's not about being present on the surface. It's like a hole. So just imagine it like
Mm-hmm.
whole entire layer is continuous, and then at one point there is a pore-like structure, a hole-like structure. And at this point, there
The
is
push.
no sporopollenin present.
Got
Okay,
it.
it's continuous with the layer. Now, the exine exhibits a fascinating array of designs and patterns. So when you look at the sporopollenin of different species, you'll find it to be of varieties of ways. It can be looking like this. It looks very, you can say, creepy in terms of the microscope, like this microscope image, but this is how it gives out the different patterns that there are. Now, moving forward, talking about the inner layer. Now, the inner layer or the inner wall of the pollen grain is called as the intine. Outer is exine and inner is intine. Now, this is a thin and continuous layer and which is made up of cellulose and pectin. So, intine is made up of cellulose and pectin. The cytoplasm of pollen grain is surrounded by the plasma membrane. When the pollen grain is mature, it contains two cells. Now, inside the intine, there are two cells present that are, one is the larger cell called as the vegetative cell. One is the smaller cell called as the generative cell. Now, the vegetative cell is bigger and it has abundant food reserve and large irregularly shaped nucleus. The generative cell is smaller and it floats in the cytoplasm of the vegetative cell. So generative cell is small. Now, once the pollen grain has this structure, meaning outer exine, inner intine, and then the two cells. So in 60% of angiosperms, the pollen grains are shed at the two cell stage, meaning once the pollen grain reaches this particular stage, then they are shed after dehiscence of anther. So this is two cell stage, and in 60% of angiosperm, this is the stage at which the pollen grains are shed. Now, in the remaining species, meaning in the rest of the 40%, this generative cell further divides by mitosis, not meiosis, by mitosis, and it gives rise to two male gametes. So now, if this was the cell, so now this becomes like this. There are 1, 2, and 3 cells. So in 40% of the angiosperms, the pollen grains shed at 3 cell stage, but in 60% it sheds at 2 cell stage. Clear?
Ma'am, why does it go under mitotic division?
See, mitotic division is the division that will not reduce the number of chromosomes. Meiotic division reduces the number of chromosomes so that sexual reproduction can happen. But this mitosis and meiosis, have you studied about it in class 11?
Yes.
Right? So, mitosis was known as the equational division, and meiosis is known as the reductional division. Okay?
Yes.
Yeah, so equational and reductional in terms of the number of chromosome. So in the mitosis, here now we do not need to decrease the number of chromosomes. We just need two more cells. So that is why from the generative cell, it gets divided by the process of mitosis, because mitosis leads to the increase in the number of cell without any change in the chromosome number. But meiosis leads to the change in the chromosome number. Clear? Hmm? Any doubts? Are you there, Afia? All right, so moving forward, the pollen grains of many species, they cause severe allergies and bronchial afflictions in some people, leading to chronic respiratory disorders such as asthma and bronchitis. So many people are allergic to the pollen grains. You might have seen there are some people, if you bring a flower near them, they'll start sneezing. Why? Because they're allergic to the pollen. Okay, and it causes severe allergy in those people. Now, what are those examples of the pollen, like the plants that, like whose pollens are extremely, you can say, like it is a contaminant or it can cause allergy? So such as parthenium is one example. Parthenium is also known as carrot grass, and it came into India as a contaminant with imported wheat. So wheat, when wheat was imported in India, then along with wheat, parthenium also came. And this was a great, you can say, allergen, and it causes pollen allergy. Then another example is of chenopodium. It also causes pollen allergy. Now, pollen
Ma'am,
grains,
will they ask you to give examples as well?
yeah, maybe example can be asked as to, now you, if you don't want to remember this, but this must be remembered. Like
Parthenium,
parthenium,
yes.
yes, I can't hear you.
No, I was saying okay, Parthenium, yes, you can remember. But like, do you have to give two examples?
The examples are necessary because, you know, like it's biology, and biology works on example only. So maybe the examples can be asked, it may not be asked also. But if a question related to pollen allergy is asked, then people would wonder, right, which pollen actually causes the allergy. So parthenium, you can remember parthenium. And if you just write carrot grass, maybe you'll get marks, maybe you'll not get the marks, but parthenium is the scientific name, so that is why it is important to remember. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, the pollen grains, they are rich in nutrients, they are rich in proteins, and it has become a fashion in recent years to use pollen tablets as food supplements since they are so high in nutrients. So, pollen tablets, pollen syrups, these are available in the market as a source of, you can say, supplement, and people use it. And that this pollen consumption has been claimed to increase the performance of athletes and racehorses. So, it increases the performance, or you can say enhances the performances in the athletes and racehorses. Now, when once they are shed, pollen grains have to land on the stigma before they lose viability. Now, stigma is a part of carpel. And what is
Ma'am,
carpel?
can you go again with the last part?
Pollen allergy, this thing, nutrient.
Yeah, this one. Yes.
Yeah, it says that the pollen grains, they are rich in nutrients, they are rich in energy and proteins. So pollen grains are many a time consumed by people so as to get the enhanced energy, or you can say better performances. And pollen tablets, pollen syrups, these are available in the market, which are used by athletes and racehorses to, you can say, increase their performance or to enhance their performance. Clear?
Got it.
It is used like a supplement. Now, once the pollen grains are shed, they have to land on the stigma. And I am saying that stigma is a part of carpel. Now, you tell me what is carpel? Hmm? What is carpel?
Yes. Carpel is calyx. Is it?
Yes?
Is it the pistils, like
Yeah, what is it?
pistils?
Pistil and carpel are the same thing. So, what are they?
Yes. They are like the female reproductive part.
Yeah, the female reproductive part. So now once the pollen grains have been released, they have to land on the female reproductive part before they lose viability. Now losing viability means losing their functionality, meaning if they lose their viability, meaning they cannot fertilize. So that is why they have to land on the stigma before they lose the viability. Now, different pollens have different viability period. Some pollen grains remain viable. It is highly variable and to some extent depends on the temperature and humidity also. In some cereals such as rice, wheat, pollen grains lose viability within 30 minutes of their release. So they can only fertilize within 30 minutes. After 30 minutes, they are of no use. But there are some members of the family Rosaceae, Leguminosae, and Solanaceae. Their pollen grains are viable for months. Now, just like how the seed banks are there, same way the pollen grains can also be, you can say, stored for future use. Okay, and this method of storing pollen grains, it is done, you can say, in liquid nitrogen under minus 196 degrees Celsius. And by this method, we can store the pollen. And this method of storing the pollen is known as cryopreservation. And such stored pollens can be used as pollen banks, similar to seed banks. And whenever the farmer or anyone who wants to fertilize the plant of choice, he can use those stored pollens. Clear?
Ma'am, why do we take a very low temperature?
Because at that point of time, the pollen grains can stay alive. This is the optimum temperature that is required for them to, you can say, be preserved. This is the temperature that is needed. It is not variable. You can't change the temperature. This is what it is needed for the storage of pollen. Like everything has a certain temperature at which it will be fine for storing it at a long period of time. So minus 196 degrees Celsius is the optimum temperature for storing the pollen. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, now let's talk about the pistil, which is the female reproductive structure. We'll also talk about megasporangium and the embryo sac. Now, the gynoecium represents the female reproductive part of the flower. Now, the gynoecium may consist of a single pistil. Only one pistil is present. So, we'll call that kind of a gynoecium as monocarpellary because only one carpel is present. So, mono means one. It can have more than one pistil or more than one carpel. So, we'll call it as multicarpellary. When there are more than one pistils, they may be fused together, and that condition is known as syncarpus. So all the pistils that are there, they can come and be fused together, and this condition is known as syncarpus, or they all can be free. So that is known as apocarpus. Each pistil has three parts. Just like how the stamen had two parts, now the pistil has three parts. The stigma, the style, and the ovary. Now, the stigma serves as the landing platform for the pollen grains. If you see it here, wait, the diagram is not given. The diagram is not given. I'll draw it here. This part is the stigma. This part is the style. and the basal swollen part is the ovary. Yes?
Thalamus is below the ovary.
What?
Thalamus is below the ovary.
It can vary from flower to flower. Thalamus can be above also, below also, at the same level also. But we're not talking about thalamus here. We're talking about ovary, the parts of the female reproductive structure, not the body of the flower. Okay?
Yes.
So talking about the stigma, it is the landing portion for the pollen grains. So after the pollen grains are released in the air, it comes and lands onto the stigma. Talking about the style, it is the elongated, slender, meaning thin portion right beneath the stigma. The basal bulged part of the pistil is the ovary. Inside the ovary, there is ovarian locule or ovarian cavity. The placenta is located inside the ovarian cavity. And then there is the ovule present right inside. So if you
Ma'am,
see,
what does style do? Stigma will receive the pollen, right? So what does style do?
style sort of guides the pollen to the ovary where the egg is
Alright.
present. So it is sort of like a pathway through which the pollen grains go through. Okay.
Got it.
So arising from the placenta are the megasporangia, which are commonly known as the ovule. Now the number of ovules in an ovary may be one, for example, wheat, paddy, and mango. The number of ovules in the ovary may be many, just like in papaya, watermelon, and orchids. Talking about the megasporangium, that is ovule. Now let us familiarize ourselves with the typical structure of the angiospermic ovule. Ovule has a structure attached to the, like it is a structure which is attached to the placenta with the help of a stalk, which is known as funicle. So ovule is attached to the placenta with the help of this structure, that is the funicle, this part. Now, the body of the ovule fuses with the funicle in the region called as hilum. Thus, hilum represents the junction between ovule and the funicle. So, right below the funicle, there is a part which is known as hilum. And hilum is where the ovule gets attached onto the stalk-like structure called as funicle. Each ovule has one or two protective envelope called as the integuments. Integuments encircle the nucellus except at the tip where a small opening called as the micropyle is organized. So this whole entire ovule is covered by a protective layer, that is integument, and it is outer integument, inner integument. Inside the integument, there
What
is a
does it do?
protective
What
layer.
is the
It's a protective layer, protection.
Got it.
Yeah, so the integument, which are the protective layers, they surround the structure, the nutritive structure, which is known as nucellus. And right inside the nucellus is present the embryo sac, which is of the most important thing for us to know. Now, opposite to the micropyle end. Now, see, micropyle is the opening, the point where the integument is not there, and the point from which the pollen tube will go to the embryo sac. So opposite to the micropyle end is the chalazial end, and that represents the basal part of the ovule. So anything that, like anything in, you can say a structure has a top part and a basal part. So the basal part of the ovule is chalaza, and the top part is micropyle. Enclosed within the integument is a mass of cell called as the nucellus. Cells of the nucellus have abundant food reserve, like reserve food material, and located inside the nucellus is the embryo sac or the female gametophyte. Now, an ovule generally has a single embryo sac formed from a megaspore. Any doubts up until now in the structure of ovule or the female reproductive structure?
And what does this chalaza do? Chalazal end.
Chalaza is the basal part of the ovule, meaning anything that has a base and a top. So the top part is micropyle, the base part is chalaza. It's the name.
Right.
Now talking about megasporogenesis. So megasporogenesis is the formation of megaspore from megaspore mother cell by meiosis, obviously. Just like how microspores were being formed from microspore mother cell, that is microsporogenesis, here is megasporogenesis. Now, ovules generally differentiate a single megaspore mother cell in the micropyle region. So, megaspore mother cell is present in the ovule of the nucellus. Now, it is a large cell containing dense cytoplasm and a prominent nucleus. Now, what happens is that the megaspore mother cell, it undergoes meiotic division and forms 4 megaspores. Now, out of these 4 megaspores, only one is functional. The rest 3 will degenerate because they are non-functional. Now, the functional megaspore develops into the female gametophyte or the embryo sac. And since only one megaspore is being used, so we'll call it as monosporic development. Mono means one, sporic is referring to the megaspore and development. So monosporic development. This is how the female gametophyte is made. Now, after the female gametophyte or the embryo sac is made, there is certain, you can say, adjustment that happens inside it. Now, the nucleus of the functional megaspore divides mitotically to form 2 nuclei which move to the opposite poles. See here, it forms 2 nuclei, one nuclei and second. So they move to the opposite poles. Then it divides again and forms 2 more nuclei. So 2 of them at one pole, 2 of them at another. Then at the end, 4 nuclei are formed. So 4 at one pole and 4 at another. So total 8 nuclei are formed. Now they get arranged, like these 4 nuclei that you're seeing, they get arranged into this proper structure. And now we're going to see how the arrangement is happening. So, so it forms 2 nucleate embryo sac. Then after 2 more mitotic division, it forms 4 nucleate embryo sac and it forms 8 nucleate stage. Now, now 8 nucleus are there in the cell. Now, after every nuclear division, there happens a cell wall division or the cell division. So, cell walls are laid down, leading to the organization of the typical female gametophyte or the embryo sac. So, cell division will be complete only after the cell walls are laid down. Now, 6 of the 8 nuclei are surrounded by cell wall and they are organized into cells. The remaining 2 nuclei are called as the
Ma'am,
polar nuclei. Yes.
what does laid down means here? Like cells are laid down, leading to organization.
Do you see this structure? There are just 4 nuclei present. We'll call it
Right.
one cell. This is one cell, but one cell is containing 8 nuclei. Getting it?
Yes.
Now, in order for it to become separate cell containing their own nuclei, cell walls are laid down, meaning cell walls are made surrounding them like this.
Right. Got
And
it.
they get organized. So 3 of them are present at the chalazal pole, meaning the basal side, and those are known as the antipodal cells. They are surrounded by the cell wall, each of them individually. And then 3 of them are surrounded by the cell wall towards the micropyle end, towards the top end. And then 2 of them do not get any cell wall, so they are present in the cell, like the central cell, the main portion, like in the middle. So this is how the organization takes place in the female gametophyte. Clear?
Yes, got it.
Hmm. So because of this very reason, the mature angiosperm embryo sac is known as 8 nucleated and 7 celled. Why? Because, see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and this whole entire 7. 7 cells are there, and then 8 nuclei are there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 8 nuclei, but 7 cells are there. This is a very characteristic feature. This part Once I'm done teaching you, once you're done with the class, you read it nicely on your own also. Okay?
Now, how will they ask question from this? Will they ask to
What is
explain
like
the
how
eight
is
nucleate
the
seven cells?
embryo sac eight nucleated and seven celled? Then you have to explain why is it eight nucleated and seven celled.
Like with the diagrams and stuff.
You can draw the diagram, it will give you bonus points. And if you explain it nicely, then draw the diagram, full
Mm.
mark.
All right, got it.
Any doubts up until now?
Ma'am, what if there was a question which was said like there was three statements given, and the
Hmm.
third statement was like seeds of rice and wheat remain viable for several years at normal condition. But that's false, right? Because seeds of rice and wheat they remain only for a few years.
30 minutes. They are
So the
viable for only
statement
30
three is
minutes.
Acha.
That is why the statement can become wrong. Only the members of Rosaceae, Leguminosae, and this thing, Solanaceae, they have their pollen grains viable for several months. Rest, wheat, and stuff, they have their viability only for 30 minutes, half an hour.
But
Okay?
ma'am, my ma'am told okay, some of them do stay for years. Some. Are there
Yeah.
any cases like where it would stay for like months?
Yeah, there are some examples. For example, here we'll be studying about it. There are some that have been able to fertilize, meaning they have been viable for over 2000 years, just like this thing. The date palm, Phoenix dactylifera, they can be viable for 2000 years. Then there is another one which has been viable for, yeah, lupine, Arcticus. It has been viable for 10,000 years. So the example is there later.
Like, but those are not normal conditions, right? And this question is given normal conditions. So normal condition it would be like 30 minutes.
There's nothing normal or abnormal about it because every plant has their own physiology, every plant has their own
Mm-hmm.
viability. So not normal and abnormal, it depends on species to species. If you're talking about wheat, so 30 minutes is the normal for it. But if you're talking about the members of solanaceae, just like potato or stuff, so for them, 3 months and months are viable. Okay, so it varies from
Yes.
plant to plant. Now see, now we have discussed how the male gamete has been formed and how the female gamete has been formed. Now the for this thing for fertilization, meaning for the fusion of two gametes to take place, the male gamete has to be transferred to the female gamete, and that happens with the help of pollination. Now pollination is the process through which the transfer of pollen grain from the anther to the stigma of a pistil is termed as pollination. Now, there are different kinds of pollination depending upon where the pollen is coming from. The first is autogamy. Autogamy is known as self pollination. In this type, pollination is achieved within the same flower. The transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma of the same flower, meaning in one flower only when there is the male part present and there is the female part present. So the pollen can be transferred in the same flower. So that is autogamy. In a normal flower which opens and exposes the anther and stigma, complete autogamy is rather rare. Autogamy in such flower requires synchrony in pollen release and stigma receptivity. Now, when the pollen grains are released, if they land on the stigma, that does not ensure pollination. Pollination is ensured only when the anther is released, when the stigma is ready. If the stigma is ready, it means that the stigma is receptive, meaning it is ready to receive the pollen. And then, if the pollen grains are transferred, then successful pollination will take place. Now, there are some plants such as viola, which is known as common pansy, oxalis, and commelina. Now, they produce two different kinds of flowers. In them, one kind of flower is chasmogamous flower, which means they have exposed anther and stigma. So, they are open flowers. And then there is another type that is cleistogamous, that is, the flowers are not open at all. So in this type of condition, in Clistogamous, when the flowers are not opening at all, so it means that the anther and the this thing, the stigma, they are lying very close to each other, because of which successful pollination will take place. Clear? So with this, we
Ma'am,
can
can you explain cleistogamous?
Clistogamous is when the flower does not open. The flower is closed. And inside the flower, there is a male and the female reproductive structure. So when the male anther will dehisce, the pollen grains will be released. And since the flower is not opening, so the pollen grain will be released inside only, and it will land on the stigma of the same flower, which will cause the autogamy or self-pollination. Clear?
Got it. Got it, ma'am.
Hmm. So if in the the cleistogamous flowers are invariably autogamous, meaning they can do the pollination autogamous, because there is no chance of cross pollen landing on it, because if the flower is closed, any pollen from the outside, any other pollen cannot come inside on and land on the stigma. So that is why they have assured pollination, that is autogamy. Now we'll talk about geitonogamy. Geitonogamy refers to the transfer of pollen grains from the anther.
Ma'am, ma'am, what's homogamy?
Huh?
There was a thing we learned, homogamy.
Homogamy.
Yes, I don't think this is there in NCRT though.
Homogamy is a phenomena wherein the male part and the female part of the flower, they mature at the same time. So
Got
if they
it.
mature at the same time, then if the pollen grains will be transferred, then assured pollination will take place. Clear?
Yes, sure. Got it.
Now talking about geitonogamy. So here the transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma of another flower of the same plant. Although geitonogamy is functionally cross-pollination, but it is genetically similar to the autogamy. It will involve the pollinating agent. It will require some agent to carry the pollen from one flower to another flower, but the plant is same. So genetically it is autogamy, but functionally it is cross-pollination. Clear? The plant is same,
Got it,
but the
ma'am.
flowers are different.
What are the disadvantages of cross pollination?
There are no such disadvantages of cross pollination, because cross pollination brings genetic variability. It is better, it is more advantageous only. The
It's
transfer,
preferred more than self pollination, right? So
hmm?
there must be like some advantages or disadvantages. They say it's preferred more for cross pollination because it's give
I
you
can't hear
variations.
you. I can't hear you.
But they say it's preferred to go for this cross pollination because it gives you variation,
Correct.
right? So, but there must be like some disadvantages for both, like self pollination, why it's discouraged, and why cross pollination is encouraged.
See, self pollination is discouraged because when self pollination is done for many generation, it leads to the loss of character. It leads to the loss of, you can say, important characters, and the flower, they start losing their vigor. But when the cross pollination takes place, during that place, what happens? That variations are arising. Now, one disadvantage may be in this case that not always the right type of pollen will fall. Sometimes the wrong type of pollen will come, and it will lead to the failure of fertilization. So that may be one disadvantage of the xenogamy or cross pollination. Okay.
Got it now.
Now, xenogamy is the cross pollination wherein the transfer of pollen grains from anther to the stigma of a different plant takes place. Here, genetically different types of pollen grains are brought to the stigma. Clear? All right, so we'll keep it till here
Got it.
only for today, because the time is up and I have more classes. And tomorrow we'll continue from here. Okay?